They say Rome never slept. By day, it glittered, all marble, gold, and the echo of triumphs. But by night, the empire dreamed in sin. Beneath its columns and temples, shadows whispered of an empress whose name no historian dared to record. Her name was Valeria Drusilla, a woman born not of royal blood but of ambition so fierce it could melt marble. She rose through charm, wit, and a power that made men forget their vows. Some said even the gods bent closer when she spoke. Others swore her beauty was a weapon forged by the underworld itself. Before we delve into these overlooked tales of endurance and pain, if you find yourself drawn to the hidden corners of history, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories like this. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I am always amazed that we can explore these ancient narratives together, no matter where we are in the world, united by our curiosity about the past. Drusilla became empress after the mysterious death of her husband, Emperor Cassianus. Rome mourned him for a week, but by the 8th day, the people celebrated her coronation with wine that flowed thicker than tears. From that moment, Rome's golden heart began to rot. The narrator's voice lowers. In every empire, there comes a night when pleasure becomes law and decency a crime. Inside the imperial palace, a labyrinth of silk curtains and gilded cages, Drusilla hosted banquets of the unseen. No outsider knew what truly happened there, only that those invited returned changed, some trembling, some silent, others suddenly powerful beyond measure. The Senate called her the Jewel of Rome. The people called her the Mother of Ecstasy. But the slaves whispered another name, Domina Tenebrarum, the Mistress of Shadows. Her influence reached everywhere. Governors offered her gifts from distant provinces, sapphires, exotic oils, and, it was rumored, even the loyalty of their wives. They say Rome never slept. By day, it glittered, all marble, gold, and the echo of triumphs. But by night, the empire dreamed in sin. Beneath its columns and temples, shadows whispered of an empress whose name no historian dared to record. Her name was Valeria Drusilla, a woman born not of royal blood but of ambition so fierce it could melt marble. She rose through charm, wit, and a power that made men forget their vows. Some said even the gods bent closer when she spoke. Others swore her beauty was a weapon forged by the underworld itself. Before we delve into these overlooked tales of endurance and pain, if you find yourself drawn to the hidden corners of history, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories like this. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I am always amazed that we can explore these ancient narratives together, no matter where we are in the world, united by our curiosity about the past. Drusilla became empress after the mysterious death of her husband, Emperor Cassianus. Rome mourned him for a week, but by the 8th day, the people celebrated her coronation with wine that flowed thicker than tears. From that moment, Rome's golden heart began to rot. The narrator's voice lowers. In every empire, there comes a night when pleasure becomes law and decency a crime. Inside the imperial palace, a labyrinth of silk curtains and gilded cages, Drusilla hosted banquets of the unseen. No outsider knew what truly happened there, only that those invited returned changed, some trembling, some silent, others suddenly powerful beyond measure. The Senate called her the Jewel of Rome. The people called her the Mother of Ecstasy. But the slaves whispered another name, Domina Tenebrarum, the Mistress of Shadows. Her influence reached everywhere. Governors offered her gifts from distant provinces, sapphires, exotic oils, and, it was rumored, even the loyalty of their wives. When the empress raised her hand, the torches flared, and for a moment, Aurelia swore she saw something move behind the marble, something that breathed. Terrified, she fled the chamber, but not before hearing Drusilla whisper to the unseen, "Make them love me, even as they burn." From that night on, Aurelia dreamed of the Empress's eyes and the sound of wings beating in the dark. Rome had entered an age of divine madness, and in the marble halls of power, the line between worship and corruption vanished forever. It belonged to Valeria Drusilla, the woman who had learned to rule through worship. By the second year of her reign, the palace itself seemed bewitched. Senators no longer debated. They waited for her nod. Generals postponed campaigns until the Empress had consulted the stars. And each night, new faces disappeared into her marble labyrinth, carrying gifts, tributes, or secrets they hoped would buy her favor. From the outside, the empire still glittered. Festivals, parades, fountains overflowing with wine. But beneath that splendor, whispers told of a new cult rising within the palace walls, its gatherings known only as the Feasts of Shadows. No one was officially invited. One was chosen. Lucius Aelius, ever watchful, described the first feast in a hidden letter that would not surface for centuries. They entered by torchlight, senators and poets alike, crowned in laurel and fear. In the center stood the Empress, veiled in black silk, a single golden serpent coiled around her wrist. She spoke softly, and the air itself seemed to obey. Drusilla's feasts were not celebrations. They were confessions disguised as devotion. Each guest was asked to reveal their deepest sin before the marble gods. In return, she promised absolution and influence. Those who refused were never seen again. Rome began to change in small ways first. Temples once dedicated to Jupiter were red-raped in crimson. The coins minted that year bore not the emperor's eagle but the profile of Drusilla, wreathed in roses and serpents. The Senate approved it unanimously, though none dared meet her eyes when the decree was read. Among those drawn closest to her was Senator Gaius Varro. Once proud, now pale and trembling, he followed her every command. His peers mocked him until the day his rivals vanished overnight. The following morning, Varro's villa doubled in size. He called it a gift from the Empress. "She teaches that guilt is an illness," Varro wrote, "and only she holds the cure." Through such loyalty, Drusilla built more than a court. She built a network of worship, woven through fear and fascination. Even the priests of the old gods bowed to her image, claiming divine visions compelled them. Yet not all who served her were blind. Aurelia, the Carthaginian slave who once glimpsed the secret chamber, now attended every feast. Her silence made her invisible. Through the shimmer of silk curtains, she saw senators kneel before the Empress, offering not gold but obedience. One night, as thunder echoed through the city again, Drusilla addressed her gathering. "Rome has forgotten the sacred union between power and pleasure," she said. "The gods demand balance. Through me, they will remember." Her words rippled through the hall like incense. Even those who doubted found themselves applauding, unable to explain why. Aurelia noticed the subtle gestures. Drusilla's hand tracing invisible symbols in the air, the guests swaying as if lulled by some unseen rhythm. It was not wine that made them dizzy. Outside the palace, rumors turned to dread. Commoners whispered of omens, statues weeping oil, birds circling the forum at dusk, strange lights flickering above the Palatine Hill. The old priests warned that Rome's heart was being hollowed from within. The narrator's voice deepens, but prophecy means nothing to those drunk on their own divinity. Drusilla's feasts grew grander. She demanded temples built in her honor, each crowned with mirrors to reflect her light into the heavens. Governors competed to outdo one another, draining treasuries to please her. And still she smiled. In a quiet corridor, Lucius Aelius confronted Aurelia. "You've seen too much," he whispered. Then why tell me? She asked. Because someone must remember, he said, when all others forget. He handed her a small scroll wrapped in wax. Keep this hidden. If I disappear, the truth must outlive me. That night, the Feast of Shadows began again. A storm raged over Rome, lightning splitting the sky as if the gods themselves watched in silence. Inside, the Empress raised a chalice and declared, "Tonight, we dine with eternity." The thunder swallowed her voice, but those present swore they felt the ground tremble beneath them. Some said it was the storm. Others whispered it was the awakening of something older, something that had waited centuries to be remembered. The next morning, the palace guards found the halls empty, save for the fading scent of myrrh and the echo of distant chanting. Lucius Aelius was gone. His chambers burned to ash. From that day forward, no one spoke his name, and Rome continued to celebrate. The narrator concludes in a low tone, "In the heart of empire, madness wore a crown. The Feast of Shadows was only the beginning. For every empire built on desire must one day pay its debt to the darkness that feeds it." By the 3rd year of her reign, Rome no longer needed armies to obey. It obeyed a woman's smile. And yet, behind the walls of her perfumed palace, the Empress felt the first chill of rebellion. The Feast of Shadows had turned into something larger, something she could not fully command. Whispers spread through the streets that Drusilla was more than mortal, that her touch could heal or curse. The temples of Jupiter were nearly empty now. Her followers filled their own shrines with mirrors and roses. But faith built on desire is fragile. Desire changes, and with it, loyalty. Aurelia, still a slave in name but now a silent witness to everything, sensed the change before anyone else. The Empress had begun to speak less of love and more of purity, of cleansing the city of those unworthy of devotion. The senators who once worshipped her with trembling voices now bowed out of fear. Among them, Gaius Varro grew uneasy. He had offered her everything: land, power, and blood loyalty. But in his dreams he now saw the faces of the missing. Lucius Aelius among them, their eyes hollow, their mouths whispering the same phrase again and again. "She remembers nothing but herself." Varro began to record his doubts in secret, hiding scrolls beneath the marble tiles of his villa. The first line read simply, "The goddess has forgotten mercy." Outside, famine gnawed at the empire's edges. Ships vanished at sea, provinces rebelled, the treasury drained into marble temples that bore her name. Still she demanded more feasts, more gold, more worship. When her advisors warned of unrest, Drusilla dismissed them. "The people need faith," she said. "If they cannot love their goddess, they will learn to fear her." And so she ordered a purge. Accusations of blasphemy filled the Senate. Any who doubted her divinity were declared traitors. Some were exiled. Others quietly disappeared into the dungeons beneath the Palatine Hill, where silence was the only prayer left. But not all obeyed. A faction formed in secret, the Circle of Saturn, led by none other than Gaius Varro. Their goal was not to restore the old gods, but to end Drusilla's reign before Rome itself collapsed. They met in candlelit catacombs, their words echoing like confessions. "She has turned worship into chains," Varro said. "Then we break them," another replied. Still, they moved carefully. To fail was to die nameless. In the palace, Aurelia felt the tension coil tighter each night. She noticed how the Empress stared at her reflection for hours, as if searching for someone else in the glass. She heard her murmur to the shadows, pleading, arguing, listening. Once, Aurelia caught her whispering, "Why do they look at me with mortal eyes? I am beyond them now, aren't I?" The narrator lowers his voice. "Power is a mirror that never tells the truth. The more she gazed, the less she saw of herself. Then came the night of the Festival of Concordia, when the Empress promised a celebration of unity. Thousands gathered in the forum, torches blazing like stars. She appeared above them on a balcony, crowned in gold, her robe the color of blood. Her voice carried across the crowd. Rome has grown impure. Tonight, I offer renewal. The torches dimmed. A cold wind swept the square. When the lights flared again, several senators were gone, including those known to question her. The crowd murmured prayers, half in awe, half in terror. From that moment, even her followers began to doubt whether she was still human. In the days that followed, Vero's circle made its move. They bribed guards, smuggled weapons into the palace, and sent word to the provinces. On the eve of the next Feast of Shadows, they struck. Aurelia heard the clash of steel echoing through marble corridors. She ran toward the Empress's private chamber and found Drusilla standing before the great mirror altar. Her crown tilted, her eyes distant. "They come for you," Aurelia cried. "Let them," the Empress replied, voice calm as marble. "No blade can wound what is divine." Outside, shouts and fire filled the air. The palace trembled. Aurelia begged her to flee, but Drusilla simply placed a hand on the mirror's surface. The glass shimmered, reflecting not her face, but a void, black and endless. "Do you see?" she whispered. "They made me their goddess. Now they must live with what they created." The doors burst open. Vero entered, sword drawn, his eyes full of sorrow. "Forgive me," he said. "For what?" she asked. "For loving what you feared, or fearing what you loved?" He hesitated, and that single moment of doubt was enough. The chamber shook. The great mirror cracked, splitting her reflection in two. Light spilled across the room like liquid fire. When it faded, the Empress was gone. Only her crown lay on the marble floor, melting into dust. The rebellion ended that night. Vero and his followers vanished beneath the ruins, their names erased. Rome awoke to silence, the palace half burned, the empire leaderless. But in the weeks that followed, citizens claimed to see her face flicker in the temple mirrors. When storms rolled over the city, they swore her laughter rode the thunder. The narrator's voice softens. An empire built on devotion cannot kill its goddess. It can only forget her for a while. When the flames of rebellion finally died, Rome stood silent beneath a sky the color of ash. The once golden city had become a graveyard of power. Her temples cracked, her gods abandoned, her people too weary to pray. The reign of Empress Valeria Drusilla was erased with official precision. Her statues were melted into coins, her image struck from frescoes, her name forbidden to be spoken aloud. It was as if Rome herself conspired to unwrite her. But memory is a stubborn servant. The first to defy the erasure was Aurelia, the slave girl who had seen the rise and fall of her mistress with mortal eyes. She wandered the blackened corridors of the palace one last time, clutching the small scroll Lucius Aelius had once given her. The walls still smelled faintly of myrrh and smoke. The great mirror chamber lay shattered, its fragments reflecting dozens of fractured faces, none of them her own. She knelt before the ashes of the throne and whispered, "They will forget you, my lady, but the earth will not." Then she vanished from history. Years turned into decades. Rome limped forward under new rulers, men who spoke of restoring the old ways, yet trembled when thunder rolled over the city. For in the ruins of the Palatine Hill, strange sounds were said to echo on stormy nights. The clinking of bracelets, the rustle of silk, and a faint woman's laughter that chilled the spine. Superstition grew like ivy over stone. When Emperor Claudian ordered the restoration of the old palaces, workers refused to dig beneath the eastern wing. They said the soil there bled red when struck with iron. Finally, Claudian summoned a band of condemned prisoners to finish the task. Men who had nothing left to fear. What they found beneath the foundation silenced them all. Deep under the palace lay a corridor sealed by bronze doors blackened with age. Symbols covered the metal. A serpent devouring its tail, a crown above an eye. The hinges cracked open after centuries of sleep, releasing air that smelled of roses and dust. Inside waited a chamber untouched by time. No cobwebs, no decay, only stillness. At its center stood a mirror taller than any man, framed in gold so pure it glowed in the torchlight. Beneath it rested a single diadem of serpents intertwined, each biting the tail of the other, eternal, unbroken. At the mirror's base was an inscription, carved so faintly the torchbearer had to kneel to read it. Amor me fecit mortalis. Love made me immortal. The prisoners fled, screaming of voices whispering from the glass. Claudian ordered the chamber sealed, calling it the Vault of Heresy. He decreed that no one should ever open it again, and that no man or woman should speak the name Drusilla while standing on Roman soil. And yet, some names cannot be buried. Over the next century, Rome fell and rose and fell again. The empire splintered, the legions scattered, and the city itself was sacked by fire and sword. But those who plundered her treasures told strange tales. They claimed that on the night the Visigoths entered Rome, lightning struck the Palatine Hill, and from its ruins came a cry, soft and human, echoing down the streets like a mourning hymn. One soldier swore he saw a woman's figure in the smoke, crowned in gold, watching as the city burned. When he approached, the vision turned to face him, and he saw only his own reflection smiling back. Years later, monks rebuilding the ruins uncovered fragments of mirrored glass among the rubble. They gathered the pieces into baskets and carried them to the Tiber to cast them away. But when the last shard touched the water, the river turned still, perfectly still, reflecting the clouds above with unnatural clarity. The monks fell to their knees. Their abbot wrote in his chronicle, "We sought to cleanse the city of her memory, yet her image lingers in the waters and the air. Perhaps the divine cannot be destroyed, only forgotten." Rome aged. The palaces became ruins, the temples homes for owls. But sometimes, when dusk painted the sky bronze and crimson, travelers said they could see a figure standing at the edge of the forum, draped in red, head crowned with serpents, eyes calm and knowing. They called her the last goddess of Rome. Others said she was only the wind passing through broken marble. But the narrator's voice lingers, soft and final. Empires rise in blood and crumble in silence. Yet their sins endure, breathing beneath the dust. And among those sins, none shines brighter or darker than the woman Rome tried to forget. A pause. Then, faintly, as thunder rolls across the distant hills, she was love, she was ruin, she was Rome.